Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. My name is Mark Carruthers. I'm your host for today, and we'll be looking back at Newcastle United's 3-2 home win against Qarabag in the second leg of their Champions League playoff round. I'm joined by Lee Ryder, who experienced what was a historic night at St James's Park as Newcastle United celebrated their 150th European fixture. Lee, how did you find that moment of history?
Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be that sort of night with Newcastle so far ahead that people probably could try to enjoy the atmosphere a bit. And I think that was certainly the case. Good crowd, 50,000 for a game that was pretty much done and dusted. And I just got the impression there was a lot of people in the crowd that maybe hadn't been to St James's Park for a while and they were trying to contribute the atmosphere. Few people trying to get songs started and stuff like that. And I think that really showed in the atmosphere. Yeah, the game itself was, I mean, it was over before ball was kicked, really, but it was definitely over after 6 minutes. And then Qarabag had their sort of attempt to, get a consolation or two, which they did. And I thought the crowd were quite respectful the way they applauded the Qarabag goals. And it was just a nice night, if that makes sense. And I think, Newcastle can now look forward to the last 16.
Yeah, it's. I guess the tie was won in Azerbaijan sort of 7 days earlier. It was definitely won within the first 10 minutes of the second leg. I mean, whatever Eddie Howe said ahead of the game, I presume it wasn't go and kill off the tie because I think we think that was already done. But obviously, those two goals in the first sort of 6, 7, 8 minutes from Sandro Tonali and Joe Linton, in some ways, probably took some of the momentum out of the game completely. So whatever Newcastle wanted to do, it just completely killed it in the early stages.
Yeah, I think Eddie's team selection kind of reflected that he wanted no sort of scare, no drama. He just wanted the game just killed off dead. And that, I mean, as we keep saying, 6-1, it is dead. But just to make sure, they obviously wanted to win the game on the night as well. And I think that flying start, Eddie's words must have still been ringing in the ears of the players when they come out. And to get a 2-0 lead, I mean, I wish it was like that every game. It would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Which is
But yeah, I think his team selection reflected how much he kind of respected Qarabag, respected the competition, and obviously the fans paid a lot of money for their tickets, and I think he wanted to put as strong a team out there as possible. So I think he got it right.
It's kind of important to say that in the run-up to the game, Eddie Howe was constantly saying that he wanted to win the game, even though the tie was done and dusted, even though he said it wasn't. He wanted to win the game just to continue that momentum. So I suppose he was trying to strike a balance, wasn't he, with team selection, giving people vital minutes, which is why we saw Joe Linton start and why we saw Sven Botman in the side, Ramsdale in goal, Sula coming in, but at the same time playing the likes of your Tonalis and Dan Burns. I mean, not that there was much of the options at centre-back, but he tried to strike a balance. You could sense that.
Yeah, he did. I think it was great for Alex Murphy to be part of like that senior setup, and I think he can hold his head up very high after that performance. But again, momentum as well was another reason. I mean, I was surprised Trippier started again. I really was, but I think the word Eddie used in his press conference was, with everything he did last night, there was kind of method to it, and I think now the dust sort of settled, we can kind of see that. And although the second half probably was a bit untidy once Newcastle went 3-1 up and Qarabag were flying forward trying to get a goal or two, I think overall, I think we can be satisfied with it and move on.
If we just work through those sort of, I hate calling them squad players, but you get where I'm coming from with that. We'll work through them in terms of how you felt they did on the night. Starting in goal seems the obvious place to start with Aaron Ramsdale. Hasn't really had a lot of football this season, certainly not as much as I think he would have thought he was going to get this season during that loan spell. He came in last night and kind of watching the game and watching the goals that he conceded. Yes, he saved the penalty on the second one, but the first one, I always think a goalkeeper was would be disappointed to be beaten at his near post and just felt he could have done a little bit more. But overall, what did you think of his performance?
I think it was a night where a clean sheet would have done him a lot of good.
Yeah.
I suppose I agree with what you're saying about the first goal. I haven't really got much more to add to that. Saved the penalty, I suppose, first time, but then obviously the rebound goes in. And I think there was a save in the first half when one of their players went sort of screaming through. It was like a counter-attack, and he did get two hands on it and push it over. So I think for him, it's been a stop-start season, and he's not been able to get that sort of consistency going, which is difficult when you've got Nick Pope up against you. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one to see what they do at the end of this, because they've obviously got the option to buy him. If he's happy to be the sort of understudy of Nick Pope, then I think that deal probably gets done. But if he wants to establish himself as like the number one for years to come and get back in the England setup, then I think that would be a bit more tricky. So yeah, it's an interesting situation for Ramsdale.
Probably throwing this forward a little bit, but do you feel as if Newcastle are going to bring a goalkeeper in the summer, which I think there's a bit of an indication that may happen, a lot of talk about James Trafford as well, it will be someone that is maybe ready to be a number one on a consistent basis rather than someone, which kind of agree with what you say there about Ramsdale, is going to be sort of a backup and trying to push him. So like, I guess what I'm saying is, do you feel that deal will get done, or do you think they'll look elsewhere to someone like Trafford?
I think Eddie Howe might want to do the Ramsdale deal and perhaps again stick with Nick Pope. But if we're talking about being a challenger for the top 4 and top 5 all the time, you look at Manchester City's goalkeeper Donnarumma, A-list goalkeeper, Liverpool, Alisson, A-list goalkeeper. That's what you're going to need to compete. Certainly, if you're going to challenge for the top 2, then you're going to need an A-list goalkeeper. Newcastle at the moment, I think they've got 2 decent goalkeepers. I think Nick Pope is a top international keeper on his day, but in terms of the next sort of level, I think that's probably the challenge for Newcastle now. Not just in that position, a few different positions.
Would you class Trafford as a potentially sort of A-list goalkeeper? Because I think maybe hasn't done enough at City. He hasn't really had a chance because of Donnarumma. Kind of had the rug pulled from under him, didn't he, when Donnarumma signed just weeks after he did. But I do think, from what I have seen of him at Burnley, that he could grow into that sort of goalkeeper. Just needs regular football.
Yeah, could potential to be an A-list goalkeeper in the long term, but at the minute, I would say he's probably not quite there yet. And something very strange going on with the Man City situation. I mean, he signed and then Donnarumma turns up. It's just absolutely incredible that for any player to see a player that class come in just a few days after you've signed or whatever it was. So he looks like he'd be up for the move. But I think from what I know about and what I've been told about him is he's very confident. He wouldn't accept coming to Newcastle to be a number 2. He'd want to come here and he'd want that number 1 shirt and he'd want to be the main man. So that's something Newcastle would have to kind of work out. But yeah, at the minute I wouldn't put him in the A-list category, but certainly one who could become the number 1 for England for a lot of years to come.
Before we move on, I'll say a big thanks to our sponsors, NordVPN. Hit the link in the podcast description box to get a discounted offer on your NordVPN plan. 1 subscription can be used across 10 devices, and there's no risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Yeah, you can get that discount by heading to nordvpn.com/tune. If we move, Lee, to the other end of the pitch, to Will Osula, a player there's been a lot of talk of recently because of the lack of options at the top end of the pitch. I always say he's a bit of a live wire. Kind of reminds me in some ways of Lamana Luar, player we saw in the previous Champions League campaigns, where you'd introduce him with 15, 20 minutes left and he'd bring a bit of chaos and energy and enthusiasm. But last night felt to me like a massive opportunity for him to really shine in what felt like an environment of little pressure, but he hasn't really hit the expectations that people have placed upon him.
No, definitely a wasted opportunity. I mean, that game really for him he should have been looking at it and thinking I can get at least 2 or 3 goals in this game, but really he didn't even have 2 or 3 chances, and that was a massive disappointment for him. It just didn't work at all, and that's something that he will have to sort of go back and look at, because if you're not going to grasp your chance in that game, then you're not going to get the opportunity from the start, which is what he's been hoping of. I think his future is now, there's a very big question mark on it, and I can definitely see him leaving in the summer.
That was going to be my next question. I mean, there was links, obviously, with a couple of Bundesliga clubs in the summer, the final days of in fact, on the final day of the window, there was, by all accounts, an offer that was initially going to be a permanent move, but then got changed to a loan with a view to a permanent, which then got, the deal got pulled. But I think now we are seeing maybe a deal where Newcastle could make good money for a player that hasn't really offered too much. So you think that deal, maybe wherever it is, will get done during the summer?
Yeah, I think that was certainly the case in the summer window, and I think there was 1 or 2 inquiries in January, but Newcastle didn't want to lose the squad member, given the fact they couldn't bring anyone in. And now the summer does look like a sort of pivotal moment for him, and I know Newcastle are definitely going to be in the market for another forward. So I just genuinely don't, unless something absolutely extraordinary happens in the run-in and he comes on and gets 5 or 6 goals, I just can't see him progressing here. But by the same token, things can change very quickly, and he's got the ability. That's not a question. We're not talking about a player who hasn't got ability here. We're talking about a player he's blessed with that raw skill, something that people aren't expecting. We've seen it in the under-21 European Championship last summer. Absolutely fantastic tournament, and we've seen it for Newcastle as well. He's had some bright moments, but last night was a chance to showcase them, and he didn't take it.
I would argue that the story of the night came with Alex Murphy. Obviously, he's made a handful of senior appearances, a regular at under-21s level, been out on loan to Bolton Wanderers. But last night was a long-awaited first start for him. Saw a lot of him at 21s and has always looked fairly solid. I've always questioned whether he could make the step up on a regular basis to senior football. I think there is 100% a player in there. It's just whether he's at the level Newcastle will need going forwards. But what did you make of his performance?
To be honest, I thought last night he was pretty much faultless, really. I thought he did everything right. He didn't make a big fuss about things. He's waited for his opportunity for a long, long time. And, as you say, we've seen bits and pieces of him. You've probably seen him in the under-21s a little bit more than me in the last 12 months. But I think he's a player Newcastle signed because they saw something in him, and now he's got to take those chances. There's been a few times this season where, like the Carabao Cup against Bradford, for instance, probably should have got full 90 minutes in that game, but didn't. There's been other opportunities as well. So this was a chance for him to really enjoy the moment. He kind of was left waiting to see if he was going to be in, which I think is good from Eddie Howe, because it's increasing the hunger in these players.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, his parents weren't able to get a flight in time to see him, but I'm sure they'll be very proud watching back home. And I think it was a really good night for him, but it's what happens after this for him now.
And a big plus point for his barber was that he was able to get a ticket according to that interview with TNT Sports after the game, Amazon Prime, sorry. With Murphy, again, that's the thing, isn't it, with these young players, and the same with Leo Shaw, who we'll discuss in a moment. But with Murphy, it is going to be, what is the next step with him? There's a big decision made on his future as well. Does he get a new deal? If he does, I assume he'll probably go out on loan for a spell. Where do you see his next steps coming?
I think a loan would be helpful, but I also think that it's quite up in the air, because we just don't know what competition Newcastle are going to be in next season. Like, we'll hope they're going to be in Europe first and foremost, but if it's a Europa Conference League, then I think players like Alex Murphy will get more chances to shine. Maybe even you can put Asula in that bracket, really, but the younger players will get more chances in Europa Conference League against the so-called lesser teams in Europe. So I think they might have to wait and see what happens there. But yeah, he probably could do with going somewhere and playing 46 games in an AFL season and really establishing himself. And I think there won't be any shortage of interest from Championship and sort of upper reach League One clubs. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I know they are concerned about his lack of game time, so I think that one will get resolved.
And he's not really a young player as such anymore. He is young in terms of experience at the top level, but he is getting to an age now where you feel he does need regular football. Probably isn't going to get that at Newcastle. So a really interesting decision. The other big story of the night, of course, was Leo Shaw making his senior debut. Hasn't even made a substitute appearance as yet. A player I rate really highly and I know is highly thought of within the academy setup as well. A little bit disappointed he didn't get more game time.
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, Trippier was a surprise to see him start the game, but I thought he would come off earlier, and I thought Shahar would definitely be on earlier than the last 5 minutes. So it was good that another debut sort of ticked off. I think he had about 12 touches when he came on and had a productive spell even in that small cameo. So yeah, he looks very comfortable and tidy, as you say. And again, it's great he's done this, but where does he go from here? It's going to be interesting to see what Newcastle do with him. I did speak to him after the game in the mix zone, and basically he told me that there was talk of him going on loan, but the decision was to keep him here so he can learn from the likes of Trippier. He said he was his mentor and basically hopes that, this season he can get more opportunities. So he's a young lad. He's 18 years old. He's got the world at his feet. So let's hope he can get more opportunities.
So yeah, I spoke to him earlier in the season. He's a confident lad, isn't he? He's got his head screwed on for someone so young. Looking at one of his, I don't really want to call him an under 21s teammate now because he is kind of established within the first team setup in terms of training and sort of having fleeting appearances. Made his debut last week. Sean Neve again. There is probably a little bit of frustration he didn't get more game time last night. I think felt like a good opportunity to get him on the pitch, particularly at St James's Park as a young Geordie. But I do wonder if Eddie has looked a bit more at the bigger picture and brought on Johan Wissa and given him game time because he knows he's going to be more integral between now and the end of the season than Sean Neve, with all due respect to Sean Neve.
Yeah, I was disappointed for him last night that he didn't get another opportunity. I mean, the opportunity to be Newcastle's youngest ever European goal scorer was kind of like right in front of him. That would have been a lovely moment for him, but yeah, he didn't get on. Wissa, Newcastle obviously trying to get him fully up and running. I don't think he has been this season. He was never going to be after getting that horrible injury playing international football, and he had the long layoff, come back, scored 1 or 2 goals, but he's not had that run, and it's been stop-start for him. So I think he's a player that would benefit from a full pre-season, but at the minute he's in a kind of strange position in terms of like trying to get that run of games, but hopefully he gets stronger as the season goes on.
We will look forward in the competition. Obviously, we know what lies ahead, but first I will say a thank you to Saley, your go-to eSIM provider, helping you save more with affordable plans in over 200 destinations. Download Saley from the App Store and use your code EIBAW at the checkout to get 15% off your first purchase. All the details can be found in the link in our episode description box. Yes, so the draw for the last 16 is later this week on Friday, I believe. We know it is going to be either Chelsea or Barcelona. If it's Chelsea, it means 3 games in 8 days against the Premier League rivals. If it's Barcelona, it means a return to one of the most romantic games that Newcastle, I think, have played in that Champions League history, in the dalliances in the competition. Obviously, going back there with Bobby Robson, going back to the Asprilla game at St James's Park. Obviously, played them earlier this season when Barcelona claimed a win at St James's. I always feel in European competitions, it's a little bit of an underwhelming draw if you get drawn against someone from your league. So, in that sense, I suppose, from my point of view, personally, it would be better if they got Barcelona, even though you'd argue that would be the more difficult of the two ties.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of magic about Barcelona. Like just the city, even if you go there for a non-football trip, it's a wonderful place. It's a magical place. And I think for Newcastle fans, there'll be no complaints if we get Barcelona. I think for the fans, because they'll want to go there and enjoy the city, and especially the sort of younger fans who haven't experienced going to Nou Camp. This will be a big deal for them, and it's a short trip as well, isn't it? It's only a couple of hours flight, and you can fly from Newcastle, so it's fantastic from that point of view. In terms of getting through, I think, yeah, I agree. Chelsea might be the I don't want to say easier game because there's no easy games, but I think it's kind of less daunting. We know exactly where we stand as well with Chelsea, and I would fancy Newcastle over two legs to do it. I mean, they would have the first leg, I think, at home first, so you could build up a good lead and know what you have to do in the second leg. So, yeah, I'm kind of like relaxed about facing Chelsea, despite it not having the same kind of magic. But Barcelona would be an opportunity that everyone would certainly relish.
Yeah, I should point out, given that we may have to face Chelsea 3 times between now and the end of the season, absolutely not saying Chelsea would be an easier tie than Barcelona at all. Just that I think, everyone knows what Barcelona offer, the players that they've got. Chelsea have got an unbelievable squad now as well, with some World Cup winners and some of the most highly rated players in the Premier League. So either draw, as you correctly said, in the last 16 of the Champions League is going to be a tough draw, no matter who Newcastle get. But the fact that they have progressed to this stage of the competition, we can't ignore, because I realise we're sick of talking about PSR and FFP and all that, but it is a big financial boost to get to this stage. The income will be invaluable if Newcastle do want to progress to becoming a Champions League regular in the future.
Yeah, this is where Newcastle want to be. They want to be in the latter stages. It's an absolute money spinner, the Champions League. It's the only place to be. If you're in this PSR world, this is the only place to be, because whatever you earn, you can spend. Newcastle haven't been able to spend a lot in recent windows. So this prize money it's absolutely vital for Newcastle. The kind of thing that's going on in the background here is that if Newcastle get knocked out of the Champions League, getting back in it next season is going to be, very difficult indeed. And I think for Newcastle fans, they'll know that it could look gloomy if they get dumped out of the Champions League, and the chances of getting back in it by the league are, they're getting slimmer by the week because they're 9 points behind. They're going to run out of games. So, yeah, it's important to make sure they benefit from this season.
If they can get in the Conference League, you might find Baku might feel like a short haul compared to some of the journeys he could be making in the Conference League next season. But yeah, just to round off, I mentioned at the very start, this was Newcastle's 150th European fixture in the history. That includes from the Fairs Cup in 1969 in competitions like the UEFA Cup, the Cup Winners' Cup, of course, the Champions League, the Europa League. And we can't forget the other trophy or plaque that Newcastle won, the Intertoto Cup, of course. Lee, you've seen a lot of those fixtures, either in a working capacity or as a supporter. I am doing an episode with John Gibson that'll be out over the weekend, where he looks at his 10 best Newcastle United European ties. If I can just get you to pick out a couple, what stands out for you?
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, because in terms of the result, it was a bad result when we got Monaco in 1997 and lost the first leg 1-0. Very good Monaco team. Unbelievable. Yeah, some fantastic players in there. And lost 1-0 at St. James's, but the second leg was like, we talk about magical trips. Well, for someone like me at that time of my life to go from North Tyneside to Monaco and experience that. I mean, we went on the bus. There was just, it felt like the whole of Newcastle just turned the lights off and went down to Monaco. And on those buses, I mean, you know what it's like on an away game or any kind of football trip. You're all together, and there was just bus after bus going through France, and it was just a fantastic time. Newcastle fans took over the square in Monte Carlo, and it was just a great trip. I mean, they lost 4-0 on aggregate, but there's no disgrace losing to that Monaco team. But, you know, it's the famous game where the BMX banner originated from. So to be part of that history was absolutely fantastic. I actually dug out some pictures the other week that I took as a keen photography student back in the day. Took some pictures and managed to find them, and I put them on my socials, and it got a lot of traction because so many people went on that trip. So that would be, in terms of a trip, that would be my most enjoyable trip, despite the result.
Never did find out what happened to that Henri fella that played for Monaco that day. Apparently turned into quite a good player, but yeah, felt for Newcastle because that was Sonny Anderson scored in the home leg, didn't he?
Sonny Anderson, I think they had Patrice Logo, I think was another guy. Barthez was in goal.
But Benarbia, I think, was there.
Yeah, Legwinski as well. It was just just this insane team, and they were fantastic. And yeah, that would be up there. But quickly, just off the top, I mean, the Barcelona game where Tino got the hat trick is right up there as well. So yeah, there's been some incredible memories, and you can write a book about Newcastle's time in Europe. That's for certain.
You can. I always think Feyenoord away was the 3-2. Obviously Newcastle creating Champions League history that night. But my story about that night was I wasn't at the game. I was at home. My dad was working on an army base in Germany and got a phone call, as was standard, from him at full time in games. We'd always have a quick discussion whether I'd been at the game or not. And there was loads of noise in the background when he rang. And I was like, "Are you in the pub?" And he was like, "No, I'm actually in the De Keep Stadium. I'm in the away end. Nice. Ticket didn't tell me until full time. Yeah, but that one, Bellamy's winner, will, it's iconic, isn't it? The commentary from John Champion that we all remember, and the celebrations afterwards. Just a remarkable moment. Of course, that led to some brilliant away days in the second group stage, of course. But yeah, we'll look forward now to that draw, either Barcelona or Chelsea in the next round in the last 16 of the Champions League. Newcastle's European adventure continuing. Lee, many thanks for your time. Keep an eye on Chronicle Live for all of Lee's post-match interviews and pieces, and obviously he'll be looking ahead to that Premier League game against Everton at the weekend. We'll see you coming up. We'll have Gibbo with his top 10 Newcastle European days, and we'll have a view from the opposition ahead of that game against Everton. We'll see you then.